So it's finally time to announce that I am becoming Orthodox. It's been a journey over the last several years to really get to this point. And people might be actually shocked to hear me say this because I've been so entrenched in the Roman Catholic world. I've been a Catholic high school theology teacher. I've been a Catholic youth minister and director of religious education at a Catholic parish. I've been on Catholic mission trips and Catholic monasteries. I have lots of friends and priests who are Catholics that I'm close to. Run a ministry that's about the ancient faith, barrel-age faith, that has a lot of Catholic stuff, Catholic guests. And so people are going to be wondering why I am doing this at all. Is it because of the chaos in the Vatican at the moment? It's really not that. I've been moving this direction for many years. I was just getting started as a Protestant pastor when I really discovered ancient Christianity at a much deeper level. And I knew at that point back in 2011 that I was not going to be Protestant. And so I surveyed the ancient churches, and I really never made a full decision to reject any of the other apostolic churches when I joined. I honestly really thought of Orthodoxy and the Coptics, Oriental Orthodox, the Assyrian Church of the East. I really viewed them as the same thing and part of the same thing. And so my entrance into Roman Catholicism was a little bit different than other people. And so I came in, I would say, through a pretty ecumenical door, not in the sense that all Christian denominations are the same, but the ancient churches are generally making up the same thing and the same visible church, even if not perfectly united. And really over time, I have gotten to a point, particularly about 5 years ago, where I really thought of Orthodoxy as holding on to apostolic tradition better than the Roman Catholic Church. And of course, over the last few years, that's only become more apparent to me. One of the biggest reasons is I'm fairly confident what an Orthodox America would look like 100 years from now. But I really don't know what a Roman Catholic America would look like. I don't know what the worship would look like. I think Orthodoxy has a much greater stability about it, in part because of how serious they guard apostolic tradition. I want to read you a few quotes. The first one's from Chesterton. Yeah, a Catholic, Anglican who became Catholic. But I honestly don't think he took a serious look at Orthodoxy. It was pretty small in England at that time. But anyways, I think that Orthodoxy passes the G.K. Chesterton test better than Roman Catholicism. This is what Chesterton said. The Catholic Church, it is the only thing that talks as if it were the truth, as if it were a real messenger refusing to tamper with a real message. For me, that rings much more true with Orthodoxy. They just have this seriousness. They're not going to change the worship. Yeah, do they experience some cultivation, working out of ideas? Well, in some ways, sure. But in reality, there is this seriousness that they are going to guard apostolic tradition. That you saw really the Catholic Church having a greater seriousness about this in the first millennium. The second quote comes from C.S. Lewis, and he's writing to Dom Beatty Griffiths on why he cannot be in full communion with the Catholic Church. And I think if Lewis were alive today, I do think he probably would be Orthodox. He did visit a divine liturgy pretty close to when his wife died, and he had this wonderful experience that he talked about. It doesn't mean that he would. I have no idea what he would do, if he would still be Anglican or Catholic or Orthodox. I don't know. But I suspect that he would seriously consider Orthodoxy, and here's why. This is what he says to his Roman Catholic friend. And the real reason why I cannot be in communion with you is not my disagreement with this or that Roman doctrine, but that to accept your church means not to accept a given body of doctrine, but to accept in advance any doctrine your church hereafter produces. It is like being asked to agree not only to what a man has said, but what he is going to say, end quote. And that's Lewis. It's like signing a blank check on what the church will teach someday, or what some kind of encyclical the Pope will release someday that binds people's consciences. This isn't to say that the Orthodox Church hasn't had historical changes and battles and wrestling through things. That's not exactly what I mean. We'd have to get into the nitty-gritty to really do that. But overall, I'm saying this is the big picture of why I'm becoming Orthodox. I know what Orthodoxy is going to look like in America 100 years from now. I mean, not exactly what it's going to look like in all the little details, but generally what the worship's going to look like, what the belief system is, still fasting, still praying, still living this sort of Orthodox mindset and way. Thirdly, St. Basil says this in regards to what we are not allowed to change. No pope, no bishop, no council. That is certain forms of unwritten apostolic tradition. And so he'll talk about the writings of the apostles, but also the unwritten tradition of the apostles, both of this making up the transmission of the apostles to us. He writes, if we were to attempt to reject such customs as having no written authority on the ground that the importance they possess is small, we should unintentionally injure the gospel in its very vitals. He says if we tamper with unwritten tradition, we're damaging the gospel. We're damaging our own witness. And he goes on, or rather should make our public definition a mere phrase and nothing more. To take the first and most general example, St. Basil continues, who has taught us in writing to sign with the sign of the cross? Those who have trusted in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. What writing has taught us to turn to the east at prayer? Which of the saints has left us in writing the words of the invocation at the displaying of the bread of the Eucharist and the cup of blessing? For we are not, as it is well known, content with what that apostle said or the gospel has recorded, but in both preface and conclusion we add other words as being of great importance to the validity of the ministry. And these we derive from unwritten teaching. Again, that's St. Basil. He's saying, look, we don't have the authority to get rid of the sign of the cross. Like, we don't have authority to change the rite of Holy Communion. And he also says we don't have the authority to get rid of like something like ad orientem, praying towards the east in our churches. That was an unwritten tradition. We don't have the authority to alter that. If we do, we injure the gospel. This is the Orthodox mindset, and it used to be much more, it still is to a certain extent, but much more the Catholic mindset. This is why they have changed and gotten rid of ad orientem in most churches. I mean, you can still find it in traditional Latin Mass, Eastern Catholic churches, but overall, I mean, most Catholic churches do not have ad orientem. Another example would be like fasting on Fridays and Wednesdays, particularly Fridays. It's a very serious thing why Catholics stopped fasting on Fridays throughout the year outside of Lent. This is apostolic tradition. It says it in the Didache of the first century, don't fast on Thursdays and Tuesdays, but fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. And the early church and the Orthodox Church today takes all of this still quite seriously. Now, we could go down the list, which I'm not going to do. That's for other videos, and we can get into all of these like topics. But for me, I needed to share this with you, and there's a reason why. I'm really not going to be changing barrel-aged faith like a ton, really. I'm still going to be focusing on J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and using the two of them to take us to the ancient church and the church fathers. It's still going to be, doing interviews, but there will be this Orthodox feel more and more so, and it's because my family and I were on a journey of becoming in full communion with Orthodox bishops in the Orthodox Church, which is the Catholic Church. I mean, they've never stopped calling themselves the Catholic Church. You can find it in all of their official documents. Okay, so people will be like, "Oh, you're no longer Catholic." I'm like, "No, always Catholic, always Catholic." But it's important that we are Christians with an Orthodox faith in the Catholic Church. You got to maintain all three of those things. When I stopped being an evangelical Protestant, still really wanted to hold on to that word evangelical because it means adoring Christ in the gospel. Evangelical, euangelion in Greek, is the gospel. I want to share the gospel, love the gospel. I want my whole life to be about the gospel. My life's worth nothing unless I proclaim the gospel of God's grace, as Paul says in the book of Acts. And so I'm so passionate about sharing the faith with other people. But I get contacted by people quite a bit, Protestants or spiritual seekers, on whether they should become Catholic or Orthodox. And oftentimes I would either kind of be neutral about the question, or I would, really kind of push them towards Orthodoxy. And I can only do that for so long without becoming Orthodox myself. And it's a joy to be able to share that with you. I know it also brings sorrow. It does bring sorrow to my heart. It's a challenging thing that all Christians on earth are not in full communion with each other. This is what the Lord desires. It's what I desire. And so these things can be difficult. They can bring sorrow. But I remain close to many of my Catholic friends, many of my Protestant friends. All those who love the Lord, I remain close to. We share that burning fire for Him. That's very important. It brings us closer together. Well, guys, thanks for listening to this video. Again, there'll be more to come. Don't overanalyze this video because I only gave you 3 little quotes from Chesterton, Lewis, and St. Basil. But they're really just kind of giving you a big picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing before really getting into, the forest of showing why. That'll come down the road, but it's really about sharing the faith in a beautiful way, tapping the ancient faith and sharing it with the world. I've had many awesome guests on my channel, and many of them really cool, Catholics. People like Eric Ybarra, Swan Sona, Scott Hahn, Father Michael Ward, Dr. Holly Ordway, my my best friend, Dr. David Baird, William Albrecht. The list could go on. These are good people who are deep thinkers, and I've been listening to them for quite some time. And of course, they have very good cases about like why you shouldn't become Orthodox. But of course, I do think that there are reasons someone can, which is why I'm doing it. I really love the spirit of people like Swan Sona and Seraphim Hamilton. These are two guys, Catholic and Orthodox, who I think really they show their love of the Lord while also holding on to what they think is true. And so I really like, there's so many people that I love to follow, both online but in person. But those two, I have a lot to learn from as far as being patient, kind, and humble, and sharing the faith with confidence, disagreeing with a type of love and charity. I love watching the grace and humility that those two guys have. All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're a Catholic, subscribing to my channel doesn't mean that you're endorsing everything that I say. If you feel like you need to unsubscribe because I've become Orthodox, hey, you're very much welcome to do that. That's not a problem. But you'll always be in my thoughts and prayers and in my heart as well. All right, take care. God bless. Bye-bye.